Hi guys, I have got quite the January wrap up for you today. I read so much and I'm super happy. Some of these books I've done reading vlogs for, and some of them I have like separate reviews that I'm hoping to do for them, so I'll let you know about those when I get to it. So let's crack on. I think I'll first get up my reading journal, which is nearly finished, and talk you through a few stats, a few statistics. I've set up my spread and everything for February now, and I've decided to change a few things about how I lay them out and how they're viewed. So this will probably be the last way I do something like this for a while, but I don't know, it still might translate similarly when it comes to doing the video. So I read 2 books from the library. That finishes up the library books I've had. They've been extended again from the library because obviously UK is still in lockdown, so they're not due till March. I'm kind of sick of seeing them, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I really enjoyed quite a few of them, but I just kind of want them out of my space now, if you know what I mean. 1 NetGalley book slash free book, 6 were backlist, 3 were new release, and 6 were also recently hauled. Again, my numbers are a little bit scattered because in this statistics I sort of grouped, like, say if they were new release and recently hauled, I still did that, so I don't know how I'm going to change that for February. But anyway, in terms of age, I had 1 YA, 4 middle grade, and 8 that are classed as adult. I had 6 fantasy, 2 sci-fi, 1 non-fiction, 1 historical, 3 horror, 1 classic. And all in all, I know it doesn't make sense because of the amount of times that I've regrouped in different things, that's why I'm trying to adjust it, but all in all I read 14 books. So let's start. The first book I read was one of my library books that I've had for months and months and months at this point, and that was The Confessions of Fanny Langdon by Sarah Collins, and I gave this a 4 stars. It was published in 2019 and it's like adult historical fiction, a bit of gothic literature as well, murder mystery with themes of LGBT in it as well, which is awesome. It's also published by an imprint of Penguin Books called Viking, which I hadn't heard of before. But yeah, that's it for like those sort of stats. This, oh my god, I really enjoyed it. I follow Book of Sins on Instagram, and I believe she picked this as a Read Caribbean book as well, and she was talking about it, and it is amazing. I believe Sarah Collins is from Caribbean descent, like Jamaica specifically, if I remember correctly. It doesn't say here, but I swear I heard that. Anyway, so Fanny Langdon, it's basically about this story and, well, the confessions of Fanny Langdon. We find out from the beginning her origins and how she came to be in this awkward situation where she is on trial for murder. So we follow her from her early lives being a slave on a plantation in Jamaica. Then she's sent to England to have what she thinks will be a better life. A lot of horrible things are happening in this, a lot of really sad things, and you wonder how she even survives as a human being. But yeah, the things she's made to do and the experiences she lives through is just wow. Anyway, you come to the point of, which is kind of like the main storyline, I guess you'd say, of her current master and mistress have been murdered, and everybody believes it's her that's done this, but you're reading from her point of view, kind of her life story really. So yeah, it is amazing. The writing itself was absolutely fantastic. I found that it was subtle enough to be able to pick up naturally on some like nefarious deeds, but the reader wasn't spoon-fed by the author, which is something that really irritates me at times. It was packed with history, particularly in terms of scientific development at the expense of black people. So yeah, that was really disturbing to read, but you know, it's a part of history that I don't know a hell of a lot about, so reading it in a more fictional form in that sense was yeah, really disturbing. I need to do some more research on that. And Fanny herself as a narrator, as the person we're really inside her head of, following her life story, was super interesting to read from. So yeah, I absolutely adored this, and I'm going to say it now, it was my favourite book of the month. Following up, I picked up a sequel. I've got quite a few like read books that I read this month, which is really strange. I didn't do that intentionally, like as in read the colour. So yeah, I picked up a sequel, and this is Lair by James Herbert, which is the second book in the Rats trilogy. I gave this a 4.5 stars. It was published in 1979 originally, so it's a bit of like a classic in that regard, a bit of classic horror for adults, and it is published by Pan Macmillan. So generally the Rats is about a plague of kind of mutant rats in a way that has descended on London, and yeah, it gets really dark real quick. They turn to eating humans, and London needs to be evacuated, and to find out how these rats became in the first place and to clear them so that it's safe to live there again. And then this is just the follow-up to that, the sequel. Just when you think everything's done, it's not. This was fast-paced, action-packed from the get-go, which I really loved. I think that also helped with me reading it super quickly. I felt like I read this in just a couple of days. I was just absolutely absorbed. And although I read The Rats like quite a few years ago, I found that it didn't take me too long to get reacquainted with the story. I almost feel like it could be read as a standalone, although maybe don't do it if you want a better sense of the idea of these rats and just a bit more content, really. Like, just read them all together because they're great. I actually really enjoyed the backdrop of the premise in this story. So we're mainly following the events on a conservation kind of reserve in Epping Forest, and I loved how the science was implemented. It felt really real. In terms of things that I didn't really like about this, there was definitely very dated descriptions on female attractiveness. It was always mentioned, and it just got a bit cringy. There's also some really cringy sex scenes written into this as well, and it just, I don't care about the sex scenes in that regard, but it was just so awkward to read, like the way it was described. I actually forgot how explicit this could be. But other than that, yeah, I really like this. 4.5 stars. And it's funny, you might think, well, why isn't this my favourite book if it got a little slightly higher rating than the previous book? But it just depends. Like, I feel this might not be fair, but I feel depending on genre and stuff like that, my ratings mean slightly different things, and I can't really describe that. Like, I don't know. I don't know. And also it depends on if I'm left thinking about it for a long while and stuff like that. There's a lot of factors that go into what makes my favourite book, regardless sometimes of the star rating. Like, there will usually be between a 4 and a 5 stars, but sometimes, like in this example, the 4 star will become a favourite over the 4.5 star, and there's just too many factors to try and explain why that is. Hopefully that makes sense. Next up, another red book. I read Down and Out in Paris and London by George Orwell, which I gave a 3.5 stars. This came out in 1933. It's non-fiction / classic, published by Penguin. So I feel like I've spoken a lot about this because it's been on quite a few TBRs, you know, currently readings, want to get to, all these sort of different videos. But this is George Orwell's, basically his autobiography, talking about his sort of poor and destitute life in the 1920s throughout Paris and England, when he was trying to find work and really struggling, and kind of learnt what it meant to be poor, and kind of living day to day on the barest minimum, sometimes like not eating for days. So yeah, it's just a bit of non-fiction about his life. I had recently, I think maybe in the last 6 months or so altogether, I read Animal Farm and then 1984, so I wanted to follow up with this one as well, just to get a better understanding about the author behind quite, you know, big classics that, you know, students study in school and stuff like that. I just want to know a little bit more about him. It had some great commentary on societal structure in Paris and London within that time frame. There was actually a really great chapter kind of examining London dialogue, specifically slang and swear words, and it's a chapter that almost feels like, why is this included at first? But when you reflect on it afterwards, you're like, oh, that's actually quite interesting to just learn if you haven't interested in those sort of things. Like, I can imagine it being boring to a lot of people, but I read it and I was like, huh, okay, that's quite interesting. Elsa, what are you doing? You sniffing mummy's coat? It also wasn't as depressing as I initially thought it would be, which, I mean, it's obviously got some depressive undertones because he's poor. You know, you really see the dark parts of life when you're struggling, do you know what I mean? But it really did have some light-hearted, funny moments amidst all the like hardships, I guess you could say. It definitely was slow to start. I really had no drive to pick it up at first, and so I felt like I was reading this for ages. But I got into it eventually, obviously. Again, it's another one that feels very dated in terms of what's politically correct to say about people nowadays, you know, in regards to race and gender and sexuality and that sort of stuff. But it's of its time. He's not going out of his way to be horrible or anything like that. He's just saying it how it is of this time, if that makes sense. And it's not like lingered on, because that's not what he's talking about. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that was a 3.5 stars from me. Next up, to break up some of the more adult and harder reads perhaps, I picked up a middle grade, and that is Ben Miller's The Boy Who Made the World Disappear. This one was published in 2019 by Simon & Schuster. It's a bit of like sci-fi kind of vibes, and I gave this one a 4 stars. So we're basically following a young boy who really struggles. He's a really good boy most of the time, but he really struggles when he gets into these fits of anger, and he really lashes out. He goes to a birthday party, and the boy's birthday party there is basically a bully to our main character. What is our main character name? Harrison. He's really not nice to Harrison, so he has all this anxiety really that he can't explain, because he just turns to these fits of anger and nobody understands him because he can't express himself properly. And yeah, so he's full of anxious feelings going to this party that he doesn't want to go to, and it turns into him having fits of anger. Now the person who is hosting the birthday party is like a space astronaut theme, hands out balloons at the end of the party, and she's really not impressed with how Harrison has behaved throughout this whole thing, and so she gives him this balloon that isn't actually a balloon, it is a black hole, and he soon finds out that everything that is upsetting him, annoying him, angering him, he can put into this black hole. But of course there are issues that arise from this and lessons to be learned. I really enjoyed the gentle teaching of like space and the universe, and just those little tidbits that actually, you know, felt like an educational story, but one that didn't reflect from the enjoyment. Like, I don't think a child would be bored reading this. It also had an excellent moral of learning to speak through your anger, and had some beautiful illustrations as well. I feel like by the end it did get a little bit far-fetched, that it kind of drew me away from the story a bit, but I mean, this kid's going around with a black hole that people think's a balloon. How more far-fetched can it get? Do you know what I mean? I did enjoy this. I think I might go back and read Ben Miller's other book, The Night I Saw Father Christmas or something. The Night I Met Father Christmas, because this was enjoyable. Now, just breezing through 2 books that I have done a reading vlog on, which I'll link in the cards if you are interested in checking it out. I read Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find the... Oh, I'm holding the wrong book up. I read Quidditch Through the Ages and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Both of these I gave a 4 stars. Both of these were released in 2001. You know, fantasy, middle grade, whatever you want to call it. I'll just say, just briefly, because I've spoken about them already in that vlog, but if you don't want to watch it, they were just fun extra bonus content. I do like when worlds have extra things, like if they have a book in that world, in that universe. I like it when the book is then made real for readers to read, if you know what I mean. I don't know why I'm struggling to say that, but yeah, that vlog is linked if you want to watch it. Okay, then I read a book. It's a sequel to a book that I was really disappointed with at the end of 2020, but I had it from the library as well, so I thought, well, I'm gonna read it, and that is The Testament of Loki by Joanne M. Harris. This one I gave a 3 stars. It was released in 2018 by Golance, which is an imprint of Orion Publishing, and it's like adult fantasy. So in the first book we are following basically the origins of the legends of Norse mythology from Loki's point of view, who is the trickster god. He's wildfire personified, he is a demon, and yeah, so we basically go from the beginning of his kind of godly birth to the end of Ragnarok, and then this one takes on more of a modern twist. It is more like the author kind of just went with the flow, made it modern, just went how she wanted to go with the story really, rather than following the myths and legends to the exact, you know. So I was going to say I liked it more than the first book, but apparently not if I just chucked it behind me. But no, I did like it more than the first book, just a little bit more. I think the first book I gave like a 2 stars or something, or 2.5. This one was a 3 stars, so yeah, it had a bit more merit for me than the original one. And I will say it did pull a few chuckles from me, which was, you know, nice. But honestly, I just felt like I never really got invested, which is going to be a main issue. If I'm not really caring about what I'm reading, then it's not going to be an overall winning experience, is it? And I found that it still had overused phrases, which is one of my massive grievances in the first book. It just made the comedic effect just fall flat, because it was just overused, and by this point I was like, okay, yada yada yada, do you know what I mean? But there was less of it, I guess, in the sequel. But yeah, also I am gonna say this is a series that I finished now. I'm just looking at it as a duology. I know there are 2 books that were written a good few years before the Gospel of Loki, that is like Rune Marks and another one, and I think they're technically like prequels, but I don't really have an interest to pick those 2 up, and I don't think you have to read them, because I mean on Goodreads it has this as Gospel of Loki #1, Gospel of Loki #2, so I guess they're like their own thing, but they do have prequels if you're interested, which unfortunately I am not, so I'm just leaving it at this. This is a series for me that is done. Then I picked up a comic graphic novel. This is Lock and Key Volume 1, Welcome to Lovecraft by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez, which is the illustrator. And I gave this one a 3 star. It came out originally in July 2008. I think those were when the single issues were released. I think the combination of this is a slightly newer one. I want to say 2018, but I might be wrong. It's horror, contemporary fantasy, that sort of thing. Published by IDW. So I think a lot of you guys probably know about Lock and Key. It had a very successful Netflix TV show which came out like last year, the year before, which I've still yet to check out, but I really wanted to read these first. I haven't got the following comics yet, but I'm hoping to, fingers crossed, I'm hoping to finish it this year. Let's see. They are a bit expensive though. So Lock and Key is quite interesting actually. We're following a cast of characters, a family really, who have a lot of crap going on and find themselves in a really cool magical house, so to speak, but it's actually quite sinister as well. So it says here, Lock and Key tells of a key house, an unlikely New England mansion with fantastic doors that transform all who dare to walk through them, and home to a hate-filled and relentless creature that will not rest until it forces open the most terrible door of them all. So yeah, it's quite an interesting concept, like all these keys to these doors, and there's different things behind them and different things that it can provide. Like it's really cool. I'm trying to be quite coy because I don't want to spoil all the major point plots. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed that this, for a graphic novel, had a slower kind of pacing. It just felt like you were taking your time, almost like you were reading a novel, because it was just slowly giving you the information, taking its time, delivering it, and when they were delivered it was like a punch, do you know what I mean? And my interest is definitely peaked for the rest of the series, especially for the direction of the story and some of the characters that I'm more interested in seeing, you know, their development. However, for a first volume I found like it didn't fully draw me in, but as I say, my interest is peaked. I would like to carry on. I just would have liked it to have a little bit more oomph for a first series, for a first book in a series, you know. Okay, and then I had a buddy read, which I am super excited. I've been reading some of Trudy Canavan's works with Deborah from Hills of Books on Instagram, and we've continued it on with the following series, which is the Traitor Spy trilogy. This was the Ambassador's Mission, which is the first book in that. It is a follow-on sort of sequel series, or sequel trilogy to the Black Magicians trilogy, which we buddy read at the end of last year, so we just decided to carry it on together as we really enjoyed that. Yeah, this was a 4-star read for me. This released in 2010 originally by Orbit, and it's adult fantasy. So I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it because I spoke a lot about the world in general in those previous videos, like those previous wrap-ups from October to December, but we're in basically from those books we are 2 decades into the future in that regards. So I was initially worried that I wouldn't connect with everyone. I thought maybe we wouldn't see any of the characters that I loved from the original trilogy, but actually it just enriched that world even more. It was a fantastic spin-off trilogy, or a start to the spin-off trilogy. I was really impressed with this first book, and I loved that it had old favourites as well as like some new characters that just added to it. I also enjoyed exploring, I feel like I can pronounce this in my head, but when I say it, it comes out wrong, Sachaka, which is a very mysterious land that there's not much known about, just that it's very dangerous in the original trilogy, and we actually get to see a bit more of that in this first book of the sequel trilogy, which I found absolutely fascinating. And I'm definitely liking the development of relationships between characters, both old and new, and kind of seeing where the development goes, you know, where it carries through to. I really enjoyed this. We are planning to read the second book in later half of February, I believe. We've also got another buddy read that we're doing more in the beginning part of February, so yeah, really excited. She's an awesome buddy reader. Okay, so next up I read another classic, which I'm super happy for, because that's like 2 of my 8 classics down now. The other one was down now in Paris and London, and the other one I picked up was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, and as you can see I've tabbed it quite a bit. I felt compelled to, with like bits of beautiful writing and things like that. I was going to read some of the quotes out, but I might just leave that now because this video is already so long. But yeah, just for my own pleasure to kind of look back through and read over some things. So yeah, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. It was originally released in 1992 by Wordsworth Editions Limited, and it's classic Gothic literature. So I think a lot of you guys know what The Picture of Dorian Gray is about. Basically, an artist paints the likeness of this really beautiful man, and in like this weird kind of fit of emotion, he wishes, or he sort of unintentionally perhaps makes a deal with the devil, but not literally with the devil, but you still kind of wonder how this has happened, that he doesn't age, and that the picture takes all of his age and all of his sins, and he will stay young and beautiful forever. So that's kind of like the general premise of it. It was definitely easier to get into than I expected. Like, I didn't for a minute really expect that this would be a quick read, because I knew it was going to, well, I assumed as a classic it would be a bit difficult in terms of the language for me to understand or read, and I knew the writing was much smaller, so I thought, okay, looks in this case is very deceptive, it's going to take me a little while, but it actually was easier to get into than I did expect. I enjoyed the themes and conversations of the obsession with beauty. I thought that was a really interesting topic to kind of focus on, and I did feel quite invested in the plot and characters, which was a bonus as well. I will say though, I wish it wasn't so censored on themes of sexuality. I know, especially from reading like the author's notes and the introduction after reading this, that well, not the author's note, but just whoever did the introduction, that around the time there was a lot of controversy around the content in this, and so there was so many different edits of this, so, and just the time in general, like I understand that people might have been a bit more prudish. Did I say 1992? I feel like it's older than that. Oh, okay, apparently it is 1992. I feel like it's older, I don't know. That doesn't seem so long ago. But anyway, I also was a bit disappointed with the fact that we didn't really study the evil magic or science or whatever it was that was behind the picture more. Like, that was the thing that was really intrigued to me. That's why I wanted to read this, and it was kind of just left open, which, I mean, okay, a lot of people might enjoy that. You can kind of deliberate on it yourself and think, but with that sort of thing I want more. Like, I want to know the ins and outs of how it works, you know, but that's just me personally. Some things as well were a little bit laboriously described, to the point of me losing what the point of it was. Like, particular threads and commentary just kind of ended up going over my head because I was reading this massive long paragraph with no full stops or anything, and I was like, okay, what was the point of this again? Overall, I'm so glad that I read this. I enjoyed it. It's left me feeling a little bit, I've got a bit of a void, because I feel like maybe I haven't understood everything as much as I could have, because I never studied this in school or anything like that, and I don't have like a higher English qualification more than a GCSE, even though I loved English. I just didn't go on to study that at A level or anything like that, so I feel like I am missing some things, but I did enjoy this generally. After that, I read another one of Tor's short stories that is free online, and this one was The Necessary Arthur by Garth Nix, who's one of my favourite authors. This one came out on the 8th of July of 2020, and it's sci-fi, and I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So this one is basically, I don't really know how to explain it, and I don't want to give too much away because it is such a short story, like it's 32 pages or thereabouts, and it's loosely about this archaeologist who is thrust into this strange game where she has to find the necessary Arthur, and she's sent on like these dubious tasks to like steal babies and stuff like that, and it's all very strange. It did have a very interesting plot, and I am intrigued by this game. I also liked the archaeologist character for a main character. Archaeology is something that I was really interested in when I was younger, and it was like a career that I wanted to pursue, and then I didn't, but it's something that I still generally am interested in. But I feel like there was too many unfinished threads, and I know it is a short story and there's only so much you can do, but I am left wanting more and thinking, okay, where's the rest? It just needed to go further in terms of like explanation and exploring these ideas. So I'm hopeful. It's probably not the case, but I am hopeful Garth Nix brings this back, maybe in a short collection of stories of his own that he publishes or whatever, or like a longer story, because I just feel like there's more that needs to be satisfied. I'm left a little bit unsatisfied. So yeah, there's that. Next up, I read another graphic novel, and that is Harleen by, I want to say Stephen Sejic. I know I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I've actually, well, after this video, some point today, I'm going to film a review on this, so I'm just going to leave it here. That's why I'm wearing my Harley Quinn top. And my red lipstick for the Joker. So yeah, I'm going to do a video on this shortly after, which I'll link in the cards when it is live for you guys. Switching it back to another middle grade now, I read Ember and the Ice Dragons by Heather Fawcett. This is one that I actually bought off of a friend on Instagram, Cat's Reading Corner, love her page. This one I gave it 4 stars. It was released in 2019, middle grade, historical fiction I would say, and it's a HarperCollins imprint, again Baltzar and Bray, which I've not heard of that particular imprint before. But this was so much fun. Basically we're following Ember, who is actually, she's a little girl, but she is actually a dragon. Her father, or her adopted father, to save her life, did some magic on her that turned her into a little girl. But he is a Stormmaster. He's basically a powerful magician that is known for messing up a lot of his magic. And yeah, so yeah, she's not protected as best as she should be, and it's about her kind of wanting to learn more about her dragon origins, really. Yeah, that's kind of like the basis of it. There's a lot more, but I don't want to like spoil anything for you. So yeah, this was a really fun adventure story with a lot of heart to it. I really enjoyed seeing Ember opening up, which was definitely a characteristic of her that she struggled with, that you see in the beginning of the story, as well as befriending others whilst learning about herself. And I also appreciated the author's note on the world, because I was a bit confused, because before the said note I was really confused about the setting, the time period, a few things, the historical accuracy of the time period, but the author's note really does explain that situation. And yeah, it's a bit of a blend of fantastical and historical and that sort of stuff, although it was a little bit confusing. And I still feel like this could have been set in any time, really. It didn't really add much, like the time period that it was supposed to set in didn't really add much, and if anything it was just generally confusing. So but yeah, it was a good story. It's just those little things, those details that I usually like to relish on were a little bit skewed. Okay, and the last book I read in January was The Recovery of Rose Gold by Stephanie Roble, and I've actually got a reading vlog on this one as well. Oh, do you want to come back into focus? Hello. This kept happening in the reading vlog too. I think it's the scissors that's really throwing it off. I'll try to keep still. So this one I gave it 3 stars. It released in 2020, so it's a rather, you know, new release, and it is a thriller inspired by a true story, published by another imprint of Penguin Books by Michael Joseph. Again, I've not heard of that imprint. And I'll leave it there because, as I say, I've got a reading vlog for this one that I'll link in the card. So those are all the books that I read. It was a massive stack. I'm really happy. I don't know how I managed to read so much with working and everything like that, but yeah, I'm really happy with all the books. Like, it's the first time I managed to fill like my little cubby shelf and take a little picture of it, so yeah, I'm really happy with that. yeah, I will speak to you in another video soon. I think the next one to come up is a January book haul, so stay tuned for that if you're interested in seeing the books that I got for myself in January. And yeah, let me know maybe what your favourite book of the month was, and maybe what your least favourite book of the month was too. And I'll speak to you in another video soon. Bye. I don't know what to do. Colors all around.